Felicitations, everyone. It is iDark Symphony 777 welcoming you to part 2 of my review of Shayla's story. Now, if you actually watched the first video, I would actually encourage it. And as always, like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, and leave a comment in the comment section below on your story. So, I decided to actually change shirt because, fun fact, all these recent reviews I've been, are all back-to-back. So I wanted to actually dress up properly for this one. I'm wearing my Valentine shirt. I actually like my Valentine as a character. She's not my favorite character, but I couldn't resist buying this for like Valentine's Day, like a year ago. I couldn't resist. Plus I got rid of like a bunch of shirts. So I need to actually get some more. I took advantage. There we go. So this will be a continuation from the first part where I actually try and fix, in my opinion, the story. Now, fix is a really, really harsh word because, the whole fixing art thing is, still around. I will say, I want to say this is just hypothetical. I'm not going to insult the author anyway because at the end of the day, this is just how I would do it, but it's not going to be 100% the right way. Even I will be wrong sometimes. It's very, very likely that, the author may not like it, and I can't complain because, after all, I am reviewing the author's story, and I just want to show that I do have respect for that. In terms of art, everyone has an opinion on every single thing. Just honestly, I also have the philosophy of, if you're making something, if you make something, trying to make something for everyone, you'll end up, absolutely no one will end up liking it in the long run. So, I always think of the idea of, like, when you're making something, whether it be a story or art or a video game, make it for yourself. Tell the story that you want to do. Like, don't have anyone harass you or bother you about it. So just try your best, and if people don't like it, then that's fine. Just don't let it get to you. But this is going to be really, really, really a while because I'm going to be doing an entire story from the ground up. So, Shayla's story. What do we do with this story? So, well, we got to actually look at what can we change. What can we keep from the original version onto this version? Honestly, the only change would be Shayla. Her entire character is really well done, and there's really nothing to change about that. So Shayla, for the most part, will stay the same. It's just everything else will be different. So let's see if I can do better. So instead of the story starting at Duel's Kingdom, we'll have the story start in a flashback sequence. Have the story actually showcase how Shayla was introduced to Luther. So so for those who don't know, if you didn't read the story, Luther is a character that basically was the person who taught Shayla how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And was also the first person that was actually friendly to her despite her being blind. So I think in order to go about this story in the right way, we need to actually properly introduce us to Shayla and introduce us to her situation. Go a little in depth with her mindscape, because we know she's blind. That's not going to change. She's going to be blind. With her getting bullied, and Luther goes to save her. So she's being picked on over the fact that she's blind. She doesn't, and kind of make the reader sympathize with Shayla from the off by showcasing the fact of showing her situation, showing that she's being mistreated for being different, for being the outcast, and have Luther defend her. And he sticks up for her. The kids try and basically gang up to Luther, but Luther has other friends too, like he hangs out with sometimes, backing him up and kids to drive off. He basically thanks his friends. His friends go and do their whole thing, leaving him with Shayla alone. Luther introduces himself. At this time, he doesn't know that she's blind. And so, like, one of the kids, the reason why Luther gets involved is one of the kids gets physically involved and punches Shayla across the face. So, like, to show that she's physically being abused, like, it's taking it too far. Luther can't handle it anymore, and so he decides to defend herself. Have Luther not be part of the child care center, the group home. Have him be, like, someone who lives nearby. And kind of like a poor neighborhood. Luther goes to basically hand her the glasses. Shayla, you see the first sign that, something's off. That, she's trying to, like, reach around and feel around for the glasses, and she how would it go is, like, she would keep her head down, like, she's so afraid of having Luther find out that she's blind, that, she's just trying to fumble around and feel where the glasses are. Luther calmly hands her the glasses. And Luther sympathizes with her, saying, hey, those kids were attacking you. And have it go through what Shayla... Have Luther ask, isn't the group home owners going to get involved? Have Shayla reveal that the group homes are basically enabling this. And Luther deciding to basically help her out. So already we got our first retcon. The fact that the story doesn't start at the start of Duel's Kingdom, it starts way before it. Keep it hidden at the beginning that Shayla is blind. So have the kids' insults be like generic stuff. So that way you can at least try and hide that she's blind. At least a secret for at least a chapter or two. I'm getting tired. I've been talking for like 2 hours straight now. Okay, so that's where the prologue would end with Luther deciding to basically be friends with her, saying, "I'm gonna stick up for you. I'm gonna be there for you," and basically introduce herself. I'm Luther, and then we see her main character quirk of Shayla always constantly changing her name to mean the situation, and say her name in that situation would be like, I am hopeful. I'm hope. And basically grabs her hand. She keeps the fact that she's blind from Luther, because that would become a thing over the course of the story. We'll get back into that. Afterwards, the story cuts to after Luther's death, with Shayla being friends with Luther's little brother. Let's see. What was the brother's name? Martin, yeah. Have Martin have a story, have everything past the prologue start with them a couple years later in the group home. Luther's dead, Martin's there because his family grieved, and then I can't be the only one who saw that. The first chapter have Martin, living at the group home too, because Luther and his family are all dead. Luther passed away in a hit and run, and his parent, and you can have a thing called where his parents died in like a car accident or some kind of, or like a burglary or something like that. But the point is, Martin would have to be in the group home, and stuff like that. Have Martin like have like a couple packs of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and they're opening them, and to get ready to put the 3D marker over them, and just show a normal day at the group home with her picking fights, and Shayla being a little more confident in herself. She's still mentally kind of stuff. Have the first chapter be like a day in her life, like she's learning, like she gets a new pack of cards. have Martin introduce us to Martin and his dynamic with Shayla as his eyes. Him reading like the latest and stuff related to that. Maybe make a foreshadowing about Pegasus is about to start a tournament going on, and Shayla's like, oh, that's really cool. And then just a normal day like them, and go into more depth on Shayla's mindset. And this chapter would represent the biggest change. When the story focuses on Shayla, try and go full ham lean into the fact that she's blind, so she doesn't know where everything is. So right around that, she's have her feel around for her walking stick, and give her as good a memory as you can. After all, blind people, they see in other ways. Don't describe any color when you're focusing on Shayla specifically. Don't focus on any colors, because Shayla wouldn't know colors. She wouldn't know what brown is. She wouldn't know what blue is. She wouldn't know what any of that stuff is. And so basically, just focus on her thoughts and her innermost mind of her trying to rationalize in the ways that she can, compare everything with God and stuff like that. Have her read the Bible in Braille. Have her have Martin be like a little scrounge, he's raking up money to give her cards because have her have the Millennium Scales, because at this time the Millennium Scales would be in her possession, but she doesn't know what they are because she doesn't see. Luther basically just bought them for her and doesn't know the significance, so she absolutely wouldn't know the significance. So have that be like a little object next to her bed. You can also have but Shayla wouldn't know what it is. Martin would bring in some cards, he would actually kind of steal some unwanted cards that people forget to scrounge around or steal them. Basically, the dynamic is they're both pretty pragmatic because they're both in a group home. They're both for the most part, homeless, because even the people who run the group home don't really care about them because Shayla's blind. Have Martin find a pack of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. You do the whole boosted pack opening, and have him read the cards. And basically say what they are. You can just pick random cards, and them just doing a deck building, explore that aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh with the deck building, and says, and have Martin write 3D printer markers, so that way she can actually use them and be able to read them. And have a little neat detail where at this time, in this specific pack, Martin grabs Mystical Sand. So Mystical Sand is actually a fusion monster. It's basically a stereotypical witch in a crimson robe and crimson hat. And Shayla, being blind, doesn't know what that means. What's Mystical Sand? And she politely asked Martin, can you describe it? Because Shayla would know that there's art on the cards. So Martin would just describe what Mystical Sand looks like. It's just, it's a witch. This, just a witch? She's like, yeah, it's a witch on a broom with a red dress and a red hat. And something kind of speaks to her about that card. It's can you print that? And can you laminate it? Because I have a plan for Mystical Sand later. And so the story, that part would end with just a simple with Martin basically 3D printing the Mystical Sand card. Next chapter would have them getting the package for Duelist Kingdom. Shayla never competing in tournaments. No one really knows outside the group home that she plays Yu-Gi-Oh! And she's feeling around. She asks Martin to deliver it. It's you've been invited to Duelist Kingdom. They're completely confused, and they don't know what's going on. So they ask the person running the group home. And the person running the group home is no, because you're blind and you need to stay here. Shayla doesn't like that, and this is where Mystical Sand would kind of play a part, along with the Millennium Scales. So the Scales' whole shtick is that it believes in fairness above all, and it's perceiving what's happening as injustice. So it's like you're basically excluding someone who is of age, because we would bump Shayla's age to like 18, like legal age, so she can legally leave it. And she even has, she legally is an adult, but, she's stuck there because of her disability. The mystical scales, the Millennium Scales would activate. There would be a knock on the door. The person who runs the group home would be confused. She would open the door. Well, the guy would open the door, and we see a woman in a red dress who calls herself Mithra Salidia or something like that. But the important thing is, this would be the mystical Millennium Scales making the Mystical Sand card a real person. So instead of 2 main characters in this story, it would be 3. It would be Martin, Shayla, and Mystical Sand, or Mithra, or some kind of card some kind of name that starts with M, and has an S at the last name, to kind of foreshadow the fact that she is Mystical Sand. So Mithra would basically introduce herself, saying that she's basically an envoy of Maximilian Pegasus, because he kind of jumped the shark when it came to delivering the package for Duel's Kingdom to Shayla, because he realized too late that she's blind, and so he asked her to go and offer to chaperone. Basically, her whole purpose would be to get her to Duel's Kingdom, because it would have to be a realistic way to get them to Duel's Kingdom, because again, it's also a very weird plot point, the fact that Pegasus would give someone who has the Millennium Scales but doesn't know that she has a Millennium Scales, because in the first story, Pegasus doesn't know she has the Millennium Scales until she pulls it out of the backpack, which is a massive plot point. So in this version, Pegasus knows about the Millennium Scales, and since she's blind, he would basically use that as an advantage to try and get another Millennium item just ridiculously easy. The Scales know this because it senses an injustice, and so turns what would be her favorite card, Mystical Sand, into a real person. And what Mystical Sand's character would be is that she would be kind of a nod to Carmen Sandiego. So she'd be very vague in everything going on. She would be basically her rule broker. So like she'd be explaining what's going on and introducing Shayla to the various rules and very intricacies of Duel's Kingdom. So basically, in the first episode of Duel's Kingdom, we're introduced to that there's some special rules, which leads to Weevil stealing the rule book and finding out this. Shayla would have the same advantage because Shayla wouldn't really know what's happening, so it would be the best scenario to have someone who would actually explain these intricacies to Shayla. And I think of no better representative than Mystical Sand herself, being a dual spirit, because dual spirits exist in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, every single main character has dual spirits, and I just honestly think Shayla as is, it makes sense for Shayla to have that too. And going with Mithra's character is that she's very vague. She's trying to keep her identity as a dual spirit hidden, because she's really only alive because of the Scales. So basically, she's supposed to be another hint that she has possession of a Millennium item. That's her existence is basically tied into the Scales itself. So basically, Mithra enters the room, basically introduces herself. I'm Mithra. I'm here to help you. have her be this vague character. Have Martin even like lampshade the fact that she kind of reminds him of Carmen Sandiego. She goes, yeah, I get that a lot. But Martin would kind of be suspicious because he looks familiar. Like Mithra would look familiar because he actually saw the mystical sand card. I probably edit a part where I show a picture of mystical sand. I'll try and do that, just to give you a chance to see what she looks like. So they basically set everything up and they go to the ship where they're shipped to Duel's kingdom. Mithra, gives a background on her. She's basically like she works for industrial illustrations. She knows why Pegasus wants her there, but is kind of hush-hush about it, i.e. the scales this time. But since she's blind, Pegasus wants to be a fair sport and offer a chance to be her. So basically, Mithra would tell her and basically willingly break the rules for her. So basically, it's like, well, Duel's Kingdom's going to have a bunch of special rules, and since you're blind, you wouldn't really be able to figure out what's going on right away. So he asked me, I'm going to be giving you these rules as they happen, so that way your opponent doesn't cheat. And in essence, there should be a underlining theme of keeping things fair. Mithra's whole stance is she's a personification of the scales itself, because Shayla becomes that personification of justice at the end of the first story. We're gonna keep going until we reach the end of Battle City. So have the story start out as the same. They enter the ship. As they're going, we get another flashback to Shayla hanging out with Luther. At this time, Luther, is kind of periodically visiting. Still doesn't know Shayla's blind, but Shayla trusts him enough to kind of reveal her secret, the fact that she's blind. She basically takes him to the room. They talk a little bit. And Shayla asks Luther, do you trust me? And basically asks him all these questions like, what happens if you meet someone who would like a disability and stuff like that. And portray it as like really, really slightly depressing. Like going into the mindset of Shayla again. Shayla takes off Shayla has the black glasses. So it's like, and basically asks Luther, please don't leave me. And she takes off the glasses, revealing that she's blind. Luther looks at her eyes. And instead of doing anything, he just hugs her, saying, I'm still going to be there. And then have that second flashback end with Luther saying, how about I find you something to do with your time? Because at this time, she wouldn't have found God. She wouldn't have learned Yu-Gi-Oh! So her background would be from these flashbacks of her learning how to becoming Christian and stuff like that. So, Then we go back to Duel's Kingdom. She bumps into Bandit Keith, as what happened in the story. He gets pissed. He goes to basically hold her. Mithra actually basically kind of donkey punches him. Pegasus explains the rules, saying that, these are all basically hammering the fact that these are my special rules. So they're not gonna, and they're gonna take advantage of the holographic things. Basically hammering the point that Duel's Kingdom is gonna be completely different from normal play. So Mithra's so basically the story kind of follows the same. Shayla has anxiety, doesn't want to be around other people and be taken advantage of. Offers to go to that empty area where she basically acts like a gatekeeper. Mithra and Martin go there, and then a similar thing happens where they basically talk about stuff. At this time, Shayla hasn't really played enough to put Mystical Sand in her deck. What will happen is while they're waiting, Mithra offers to look through her deck, saying, and basically having her say, I'm here to help you, so I will look through your deck. Look through her deck, slides in Mystical Sand. Sorry. Another argument in the background. I want to move out so bad. Okay, so where was I? Oh yeah, they go to the creek Mithra looks through Shayla's deck, slides in Mystical Sand, because again, Mithra is Mystical Sand. We get the first duel against the very cocky guy who tries to take advantage of Shayla being blind, saying, "Oh, she's a pushover." And then the first duel happens. Shayla's trying to figure out how the rules work, again because we're trying to establish the fact that Duelist Kingdom plays completely different from anything else. And so Mithra and Martin there to basically act as her eyes, but in different ways. So every time when her opponent activates a card or effect, Martin would basically act as the person explaining what the card looks like if it's a monster. So like, if he summons Beaver Warrior, have Shayla like not really know what it looks. I mean, that being very inquisitive, being very curious about what does it look like, and Martin's like, actually, so that way you can get around the fact of describing the characters in a creative way. So instead of the pros writing what it looks like, you can have Shayla being curious because of the 3D technology, because they're all holograms, have Martin describe what the cards look like. And that would be neat. And of course, Mithra would be there to kind of explain how basically the rules work to her, basically just acting as making sure no shenanigans happens with Shayla. So she wins. So the first duel goes back and forth, as in traditional Duelist Kingdom. But then she feels something when she gets on the last turn. She feels something when she gets the top card, because the top card would be Mystical Sand. She pulls out the card, and Martin's with her, and it's like, what card is this? Because I don't remember this card, because okay. And Martin said, that's Mystical Sand. It's like, but I didn't put this card in the deck. And then Mithra would, of course, answer that I did. Like, yeah. So Mithra would play Mystical Sand. And then Martin would wisen up when Mystical Sand appears on the field. Looks very similar to Mithra. And he's kind of wising up, because again, only Shayla has no sight. Martin can see everything. So Martin can see that Mystical Sand looks very similar to Mithra. And he doesn't really connect the dots yet because he's a kid, so it makes sense. And of course, Shayla wins the duel by using Mystical Sand to attack and beat over and find life points. And so she gets a star. Mithra asks her, it's like, why? Okay, you won a duel, hooray! And she celebrates. So Mithra would actually go away for like a little bit. So I'll be back in a couple hours, and brings back some treats. Like, she uses her magic. She uses her magic to just bring them some treats and get them some food. And then we find out why Shayla is there. She's like, she doesn't really want to win. She wanted to get away from the group home, and so we have Mithra asking Shayla some questions over what happened, and Shayla would go into her backstory, and then we get the next flashback with Luther kind of explaining the as basic as he can rules of Yu-Gi-Oh! To Shayla. So it's like, you play magic cards, play trap cards, and monsters cards. But Shayla doesn't know how to read the cards, and so you can have her constantly misplay, because she can only see the cards through the 3D marker. She doesn't have the 3D marker yet. So therefore, we get a very hilarious situation where like she can accidentally win by just summoning like just guessing what she has, and then she inadvertently summons like a big thing that Luther can't get over, and she accidentally wins. Like, hey, you won, and she kind of doesn't feel good about it because she didn't even know what happened. And Luther comes up with an idea to get a 3D marker. I don't worry, the Christian game is going to come soon. Mithra kind of goes in the background. Basically, she vaguely hint that she's a dual spirit by saying that that she's a firm believer in magic because she's a witch. She comes from a place where wild and dream playing, and she wanted to live that life and showcase her love of magic to the world. Basically, make it at this point in time, make it pretty obvious that it's mystical sand. Like that, just make it so mind-bogglingly obvious that Martin kind of figures it out, but Martin's sleeping. Martin falls asleep. The next day happens, and they basically wander around trying to get some Mithra trying to get some exercise. Still a businesswoman. Martin actually talks to her. It's like, well, what are you? And Mystical Sand and Mithra kind of, lets the cat out of the bag. To specifically just Martin. And basically tells her, it's like, Martin, I'm Mystical Sand. Martin doesn't believe her at first, because, he's a kid. But she manages to convince him by saying that I'm here for a special purpose. I'm here. Shayla, she's in danger. At this time, she would be called Justice. So Justice is in danger. I'm here to help her, and you need to be there for her as well. By the time we get to the castle, i.e. Pegasus Castle, I will be gone. I will have to leave, and I want you to be there for her to help her finish her journey because I won't be able to. Basically saying that she once they enter the castle, Pegasus will basically be able to interfere with the whole thing, and Mithra literally won't be able to actually be in the castle anymore. So, yeah. Martin understands, and we see Mithra's character being very wanting to help. She basically reveals that she's there for a specific reason that Pegasus wants. Please protect Shayla and what she owns, because I can't do it. And so as everything goes back to normal, Mithra gives her the treats and stuff like that. And of course the bimbos come in. The whole thing with the bimbos happens. She considers leaving. They run into Yugimoto, and basically the three answers. Have proper grammar. Have them look at Shayla's deck and wonder, say, hey, this is pretty cool, but you don't really have deck construction. So what they would do is each member of Yugi's group would actually give her a card. Basically just a card that they have in their side deck that they can't really use, that would make more sense in her. Stuff like, I don't know, Earth Power, or stuff specifically to power up Mystical Sand. So basically, Mystical Sand would be the deck that would be the card that her deck revolves around. It's basically just get Mystical Sand and protect her. And one of these cards would actually be and this is where I think the author should be creative and one of them could be a card specifically centered around Mystical Sand. So like if Mystical Sand is on the field, do something. So specifically just for Shayla to kind of show her importance. The duel with instead she decides to be bored. They're bored. It's like, well, Shayla considers just dropping out of the tournament. She's been here long enough, and she doesn't think that she'd be able to actually win. Mithra kind of stresses that you need to stay. Like, come on, let's just have a little fun. You can stay here a little longer. And basically her and Martin convince her to stay, but they leave the forest, so they don't deal with the penguin guy. They leave. They actually deal with Drake. They basically challenge Drake to a duel. She wins narrowly. However, Drake is up to have Drake be a slightly more challenger. It's like, hey, you can basically have him remind her of Luther's. Like he's completely at ease. Like, oh, you're blind. I never seen a blind duelist before. There you go. And have him be like a really cool guy that just treats everyone the same. Have Shayla win, but during the duel, Drake overpowers her, and Mithra basically turns into tail for like this one duel, gives her like a friendship speech, like Drake kind of takes offense, and what Mithra does is manipulate. It actually kind of does a pseudo manipulation thing for her deck by placing the card specifically used for Mystical Sand on her top of her deck. What would happen is the scales wouldn't like that because it's supposed to be fair. So it really doesn't like the fact that its envoy would cheat, even if it's unintentionally. So it would hit it. So the scales would activate, hit Mystical Sand, and Mystical Sand would actually kind of start glitching, would be in a lot of pain. Basically act as a warning. They like, oh, it hurts. Shayla actually abandons the duel, so she actually loses to Drake. So Drake basically takes the star chips and leaves, and doesn't really leave. Decides to stay with her. It's like, hey, that's unfair. So it's like, as a trade, instead of giving, and instead, despite the fact I get your shark chips, it kind of feels unfair to technically win this way. He pulls out a card from his deck saying, I want you to have it. It's Lady of D. No, not Lady of D. What would be a good card? No, not that. Have him give her a Mirror Force. Like, just a Mirror Force. Like, it feels unfair to win in this way, but I'll see you later because Drake actually advances to the finals. They lose. So Shayla is down a couple of star chips. And then they meet the penguin guy. The penguin guy is insane, like, doesn't even realize he's there. Mystical Sand is, like, kind of, like, Mithra is, like, in pain, like, in a lot of pain. He's like, that should be fine. And she basically wanders off side. I gotta go to the bathroom. Martin follows her. Mithra explains what happened, and kind of inadvertently lets the shoe drop that she has a Millennium item. A Millennium item, not a Millennium item. And that Pegasus is after that. But do not tell Shayla, because she's not ready to handle it because it's double theft. Not because of any normal reason, it's because she's religious. And she needs to actually see this for herself. You can't just tell her. It's like, oh, you have a magic item, because she won't believe it. So just use that as a future plot point, so that way when she actually, because that actually happens in the story, she doesn't believe that magic is real because of her religious nature. So, have that play a part. Shayla deals with the penguin guy. Penguin guy basically acts super crazy. Does the whole penguin thing, penguin conspiracy and stuff like that. Goes off the deep end, attacks Shayla. You can have, and then who saves her? But one of the eliminators, the flexible. There's several eliminators, dual eliminators throughout Duel's Kingdom. Have one of them, specifically the one that's very flexible, the acrobat. Have her see everything, get involved, knock out the penguin guy because he lost. Give Shayla the star chips, and then introduce herself. And basically introduce herself as a dual eliminator. Say, well, now that I saw you, I have to duel you right now. So basically, Shayla has to do back-to-back duels. Basically have her be like a more affable person. Like she doesn't really take dueling that seriously, but she's in between jobs for like acrobat stuff like that, contortionist stuff. And she's really just doing this for the money. She's really doing this just to get paid so that way she can keep on living. Shayla would, in a very back and forth duel, we actually see the mystical sand card played, and this time because we actually see Mithra appear on the duel field. So it wouldn't be a copy of Mystical Sand, it'd be Mithra, because Mithra would disappear into the ether to recharge, so that way she can come back. And Mithra would actually still talk to Shayla on the field, and basically just try and encourage her. It's like, you need to keep going. You're destined for something great, and you need to win this duel. Contortionist duelist completely kind of freaks out with the fact that the duel monster is like talking. But Shayla does eventually beat her. And unlike normally the duel eliminators, he actually takes it in stride. Basically calmly takes off the duel chips, and she sees she technically saw what happened with her loss because of Mithra's getting hurt. She takes off an extra duel star, gives it to her, and say, I let go beat Pegasus. And she leaves, which we'll see her again in Pegasus Castle. Then the whole thing, then canon happens. Yugi Kaiba duel. Kaiba threatens to throw himself off the top of the Pegasus Castle if Yugi doesn't surrender. She's just like, Shayla goes by Tempest now. And between all that, we get the final flashback where Shayla's still trying to wandering out. She doesn't really have a purpose. So Luther tells her about Christianity, introduces her to God and all that, and basically and then basically all that happens. Then right before they fully enter the castle, Mithra has to disappear. So basically Mithra's like, I believe in you. Just I'll be, and she basically pretends to tell Shayla, it's like, you need more friends like me. So when you leave, win or lose, I'll be there. I'll be with you every step of the way. Basically confirming that Mithra would be like a permanent character in the cast. So despite the Martin will leave, Mithra will still stay around as basically her dual spirit. So basically the same thing happens in the actual tournament. Everything kind of goes the same. They do like a round robin thing. Show off each of their decks against an eliminator. Have Shayla interact with the contortionist eliminator slightly bit more. Kind of go about, kind of explain that she's just there because she just needed the money in between jobs, and she needed to pay for rent, and that's it. And have her kind of join. She wouldn't be introduced. She wouldn't show up in the sequel because she doesn't really need it. And everything kind of stays the same with the skills acting up. Everything kind of going haywire. Her gaining her eyesight back and then her losing her eyesight again. Befriending Kaiba and the story ending normally like once they leave and they're about to get off the castle. Shayla now going by Shayla misses Mithra, and then when they get off the ship, Maya actually sees Mithra, and basically it's like, sorry I couldn't be there. It's like, oh, no problem. I said, you're gonna be taking care of her? I said, yeah, I'm gonna take care of her. It's like, tell her I said thanks, and tell her I quit Industrial Illusion because I saw how she was treated inside the castle and everything that happened, and it's not right. And basically, and then Martin, and then the story would actually end with like Martin basically calling her Mystical Sand, and it's like, bye Mystical Sand, and Mithra kind of like, and Mai's like, what? And the story would end with like with Mithra joining Mai and Shayla into going to Mai's place, which would branch out into a sequel. And holy shit, I wasn't expecting it to go this long. I think I'll leave it here with just Duelist Kingdom. I would eventually have it be more Battle City. With Mithra, like the main character still being Shayla, Mai, and Mithra. Mithra being kind of forced to stick around and kind of explain and kind of be like the exposition fairy. Like she kind of like that's the main thing I would change about Duel's Kingdom Battle City is the fact that Mai would kind of be privy into the whole Millennium Item situation to the point where like when she duels Merrick, actually have Mai beat Merrick. I know that'd be controversial because it's be a letdown, but have Mai beat Merrick by just attacking him. I just think that would be a neat shock, and now Mai and now basically like now it's just a normal tournament, but Bakura's still around and Mai is still like crazy, so it would so in essence, Merrick and Bakura would still cause problems. So it's like you can do a lot of stuff with that. But yeah, Mai would be privy with the Millennia items. Mithra would have to tell Shayla the whole story and all the truth with the scales and everything. Of course, Shayla wouldn't believe Mithra because now her main character arc would be kind of having to have a crisis of confidence of being a very religious character, having to deal with something that's just completely antithetical with Christian teachings. It would be a neat dynamic with Mai and Mithra kind of helping her along throughout the entire story. That's of course at the end. If we go to the end, Yugi would still win because as much Yugi still have to win, but instead of the finals being Yugi versus Merrick, it's actually Yugi versus Mai dueling on behalf of Shayla. And of course, but the final duel of that story would actually be Kaiba versus Shayla. Kaiba wanting to at least duel Shayla one time, so I think it'd make a nice, neat end that the final duel would be Shayla dueling Kaiba, just them dueling for the sake of dueling rather than any nefarious reasons. But I don't know if I would go more into depth with the Duel's Kingdom because it took so long with Battle City took so long with Battle City took so long with Duel's Kingdom that I don't know if I'd have the time to talk about Battle City or Noah Kaiba's world. But probably if Noah with the virtual world thing, Shayla wouldn't be able to see the entire time, stuff like that. So that is what I would do with the first Shayla story. Like there's a lot you can do. Like this is just what I think. I would honestly like to hear your thoughts on this. So so this has been. So if you have any like suggestions of what you, I would actually love to hear what you would do with this story. I would love to hear what everyone would think of this. Like how would they do things? Like I like the idea of Shayla getting her own little dual spirit and being it being her boss monster, unlike Yugi who gets like Karibo. And them helping out with each other. I think that's a good idea. If you have a different idea, I'd actually love to hear it. So this has been Dark Symphony 777. I will see you next time, and cut.